Have you ever stood in your garden in late summer, looked at your cucumber plants, and felt that quiet disappointment slowly creeping in? The edges of the leaves are beginning to turn yellow. The explosive growth you saw back in June has slowed almost to a crawl. Vines that once seemed determined to climb toward the sky now hang heavy, looking tired and worn out. Down the street, your neighbors may already be pulling up their dry, crispy cucumber vines, leaving bare soil exposed beneath the hot August sun. But what if I told you your cucumber plants are lying to you? What if that tired, fading picture you see right now is not the natural end of their lives at all, but the threshold of their greatest performance? Welcome back to Earthly Delights, where we dig deep into the soil to uncover the quiet, beautiful wisdom of the earth. Today, I want to share a secret with you. We're going to look beyond that deceptive midsummer exhaustion and discover how to unlock the enormous hidden potential still inside your mature cucumber plants. We're going to double your harvest, not by fighting against nature, but by listening to her, understanding her chemistry, and responding with active, thoughtful care. Your vines are not finished. In fact, they may be standing at the peak of their physiological power. Give them exactly what they are asking for right now, and the second half of your growing season may not simply match your early harvest. It can completely outperform it. So let's step into the garden together and learn how to bring those vines back to glorious, sweet abundance. Part 1. The August Illusion. Why your vines are lying to you. To understand why cucumber plants begin slowing down, we need to look beneath what we can see. In late summer, a cucumber plant can play a remarkably convincing game of deception. If you simply walk through the garden and perform a quick standing scan, looking over the green tops and harvesting whatever cucumbers are immediately visible, everything may appear perfectly normal. But beneath that canopy, a biological countdown has already begun. Cucumber plants are sprinters. They grow incredibly fast and begin producing early, but that speed comes with a price. They can burn themselves out quickly. By late summer, many vines begin to look exhausted. Leaves start turning yellow, and fruit production slows or stops. But this does not automatically mean the plant has reached the natural end of its life. Instead, it is often struggling under 4 distinct forms of stress: severe nutrient depletion, heat stress, accumulated disease pressure, and the biological signal created by maturing seeds. For nearly 2 months, those plants have been pulling nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus from the soil to build vines and fruit. By now, the soil's cupboard can be nearly empty. When summer temperatures rise into the 90s, the soil heats up, delicate feeder roots suffer, and the plant shifts into survival mode. Meanwhile, powdery mildew and pests such as aphids have had the entire season to multiply, quietly draining strength from the plant. Once we understand these triggers, we can begin systematically releasing every one of those breaks. Part 2. The reproductive trap. Tricking your cucumber plants. Let's begin with one fundamental biological truth. A cucumber plant does not exist to feed your family. Its entire evolutionary purpose is reproduction. To the plant, a cucumber is not a crisp vegetable waiting for your kitchen. It is a seed pod. And this is where the trap begins. Life gets busy. Maybe you go on vacation, miss a harvest, or simply overlook one fruit hidden deep beneath the leaves. That single cucumber keeps growing. It becomes swollen, pale, and eventually begins turning yellow. Inside that oversized fruit, the seeds are reaching maturity. Once they finish developing, the plant receives a powerful chemical message. Mission accomplished. The next generation is secure. At that point, the plant begins reducing its investment in new flowers and redirects its remaining energy away from producing more fruit. It starts shutting itself down. So how do we double the harvest? We use this biological programming to our advantage by harvesting young and harvesting aggressively. Every time you pick a cucumber before its seeds fully mature, you interrupt the reproductive cycle. From the plant's perspective, reproduction has failed, and it responds in the only way it knows. It tries again. New blossoms appear. More fruit begins to set. The vine keeps pushing forward in another attempt to complete its mission. By consistently harvesting young cucumbers, you effectively keep the plant locked in a state of youthful, continuous productivity. Walk through your cucumber rows every day. During summer heat, a cucumber can change from perfectly sized to badly oversized in as little as 36 hours. If you discover a swollen yellow cucumber that escaped your attention, remove it immediately and toss it into the compost. Cut it free, release that reproductive handbrake, and watch your vine begin surging back into production within days. Part 3. The architecture of air. Growing up, not out. Now that we've reactivated the plant's reproductive drive, we need to pay attention to its physical structure. Are your cucumber vines sprawling across the ground in one tangled, crowded mass? A thick carpet of foliage may look like abundance, but underneath it, you could actually be creating a disease incubator. Cucumbers are natural climbers. When their vines spread across damp soil, leaves begin shading one another, airflow disappears, and moisture becomes trapped inside the stagnant canopy. That creates almost perfect conditions for powdery mildew to establish itself. Training cucumbers vertically on a trellis changes the entire environment around the plant. First, it raises the fruit away from wet soil, allowing cucumbers to hang straighter and cleaner while reducing rot and curling. Second, vertical training allows sunlight to reach more of the foliage, improving photosynthesis. And most importantly, it allows air to move freely through the vines. Good airflow is one of your strongest defenses against fungal disease. Moving air helps leaves stay dry, and dry foliage is far more resistant to fungal spores than leaves trapped in a damp, stagnant canopy. And if your vines are already lying across the ground, you are not too late. Carefully lift the main stems onto a support, begin guiding them upward, and watch how quickly the plant can respond with healthier, more vigorous growth. Part 4. Selective pruning, training the vine for peak energy. To get the most from a vertical growing system, you also need to understand selective pruning. Left completely on its own, a cucumber vine will produce side branches, often called lateral buds or suckers, at nearly every node where a leaf joins the main stem. Those suckers can draw enormous amounts of energy away from the central vine. Allow all of them to grow unchecked, and the result can become a dense, tangled plant producing smaller fruit with poor airflow through the canopy. Instead, train the cucumber around one strong central stem. Walk through the garden each week and remove lateral suckers while they are still small, ideally when they are only 1 to 3 inches long. Removing them early redirects the plant's energy toward the main stem, supporting rapid vertical growth and heavier fruit production. But prune carefully. The node is where almost everything comes together. Leaves, tendrils, flowers, and suckers can all emerge from that same small area. Take a moment to identify each part before making your cut. And what happens if you overlook a sucker until it becomes large and has already started flowering or developing a cucumber? Don't worry, you do not need to remove the whole branch and sacrifice that fruit. Instead, use what I call one-leaf pruning. Simply cut the sucker just beyond its first leaf and first developing cucumber. You keep the plant under control while still allowing yourself to harvest that fruit. Finally, use bottom pruning. Once the plant reaches roughly 2 to 3 feet in height, remove the lowest leaves around the base. Keeping foliage away from the soil helps prevent splashing water from carrying soil-borne disease spores onto the leaves, especially when this technique is combined with a thick layer of mulch. Part 5. The modified umbrella system, doubling your yield. Once your cucumber vine has climbed all the way to the top of its trellis or supporting wire, it is time to shift into a professional greenhouse technique known as the Modified Umbrella Training System. A fascinating scientific study from Penn State University compared cucumber production under several different training systems. The researchers found that plants trained with the Modified Umbrella System produced roughly twice as much marketable fruit as plants grown using another vertical system in which side branches were continuously removed throughout the season. More specifically, the modified umbrella plants produced an average of 30.5 marketable cucumbers per plant, compared with only 16.6 cucumbers under the alternative high-wire system. Here is what makes the difference. With a high-wire system, lateral branches are removed continuously as the main stem grows upward. The modified umbrella system begins in much the same way. You remove lateral branches while the main stem climbs toward the overhead wire. But when that main stem finally reaches the top, you allow it to drape over. Then, you select 2 strong side suckers near the top and allow them to grow outward and cascade downward along either side of the trellis. almost like the hanging fabric of an open umbrella. These descending branches are then pruned after producing 2 leaves, creating a canopy that is dense but still carefully controlled. The structure maximizes leaf area while maintaining better light penetration and photosynthesis without overcrowding the root system. The result is a steady and powerful second wave of cucumber production that can completely triple late summer yields. Part 6. Decoding the flowers. Mastering hand pollination. Have you ever watched your cucumber vines fill with beautiful yellow flowers, only to see those blossoms fall away without producing even one cucumber? Or maybe you notice tiny baby cucumbers forming, only to watch them shrivel, turn brown, and disappear. Those are classic signs of failed pollination. And to solve the problem, we first need to understand the flowers themselves. Cucumber plants produce separate male and female flowers on the same vine. Male flowers are responsible for producing pollen. They grow from simple, thin, straight stems without any swelling directly behind the flower. Female flowers are the fruit producers. Look closely behind the petals and you will see something unmistakable, a tiny curved cucumber already sitting beneath the flower. For that miniature cucumber to continue growing, pollen needs to move from a male flower onto the sticky yellow stigma in the center of the female flower. Under normal conditions, bees and butterflies do this work for us. But in urban gardens, or during periods of extreme heat, rain, or cool weather, when pollinator activity falls, a female flower may open for only 1 day, receive no pollen, and die. That is when you become the bee. Hand pollination is simple, and it can be remarkably effective. I've seen fruit set increase 2 or even 3 times. All you need is a cotton swab or a small watercolor brush. Start by finding a fully open male flower. Gently move the brush around the center of the flower to collect the sticky yellow pollen. You should begin seeing tiny yellow particles covering the brush tip. For a good pollen load, collect from 2 or 3 male flowers. Then locate an open female flower. Carefully press the pollen-covered swab or brush into the center, rotating it gently against the soft yellow stigma. Do this early in the morning, while flowers are fresh and the pollen is at its most viable. The entire process takes only a few minutes, costs nothing, and guarantees successful fertilization. Part 7. The Science of Bitterness. Taming cucurbitacin. Most of us have experienced this disappointment at least once. You harvest a beautiful cucumber, take the first bite, and suddenly your mouth is filled with a sharp, unpleasant bitterness. That bitter flavor comes from a group of natural defensive compounds called cucurbitacins. In the wild, cucumber plants produce cucurbitacins B and C throughout their leaves, stems, and roots, as protection against insects, rabbits, deer, and other animals that might eat them. Under normal, comfortable growing conditions, these compounds remain outside the fruit. But when a cucumber plant becomes stressed, through temperatures above 90 degrees, dramatic temperature changes of around 20 degrees, or inconsistent watering, it enters a heightened defensive state and begins flooding the fruit with bitter compounds. Genetics also influence bitterness. Certain heirloom varieties react strongly to stress, while many modern cultivars have been bred with recessive genes that help the fruit remain sweet. Varieties including Diva, Sweet Success, Marketmore 76, and the heat-tolerant Suyo Long are genetically programmed to resist bitterness, making them strong choices for hot summer gardens. But what if your mature plants are already producing bitter cucumbers? You do not necessarily need to throw those fruits away. Cucurbitacins move through the plant's vascular system, which means they tend to accumulate most strongly around the stem end and just beneath the dark green outer skin. The blossom end is almost always completely sweet. When you harvest a bitter cucumber, cut approximately 1 inch from the stem end, then peel deeply enough to remove the dark green skin and expose the pale inner flesh. Beneath it, you may find the crisp, sweet cucumber you were hoping for. At the same time, we can begin addressing the stress conditions in the garden itself. Part 8. The Sacred Rhythm of Hydration and Organic Feeding. If we want to reduce bitterness and double cucumber production, irrigation and nutrition have to become part of a consistent rhythm. Cucumbers are approximately 96% water, and water stress is the #1 cause of bitter, misshapen fruit. Avoid watering frequently, but only at the surface. A small daily sprinkle wets little more than the top layer of soil and encourages roots to remain shallow and vulnerable. Instead, water deeply and slowly 2 or 3 times each week, soaking the soil 6 to 8 inches down into the zone where the active roots are working. Keep the soil's volumetric water content consistently between 45% and 65%. Once that water is in the soil, protect it. Spread a 2 to 3 inch layer of organic mulch, clean straw, shredded leaves, or compost around the base of each plant. Mulch cools the root zone, slows evaporation, and creates a protective barrier that helps stop soil-borne diseases from splashing onto the foliage. Then, it is time to feed the plants. By the middle of summer, cucumber vines have already spent months drawing nutrients from the soil. At this point, they can be starving. But avoid fertilizers that are extremely high in nitrogen. Nitrogen pushes the plant toward heavy leaf growth, potentially giving you an enormous jungle of foliage without many cucumbers. At this stage of the season, we want fruit production, which means lower nitrogen with strong potassium and phosphorus support. One way to create an organic fruiting booster is banana peel and compost tea. Banana peels contain high levels of potassium and calcium, two nutrients that play important roles in flower set and fruit development. But never bury raw banana peels directly inside pots or container soil. Within a confined container environment, raw peels can decompose unevenly, consume oxygen around the roots, and attract large numbers of fungus gnats. Instead, chop 4 or 5 organic banana peels and simmer them in 1 quart of boiling water for about 15 minutes to extract their soluble minerals. Allow the mixture to cool, strain away the solid pieces, and pour the liquid into a 5-gallon bucket. Add 2 generous handfuls of finished compost or worm castings, fill the remaining bucket with water, and leave the mixture uncovered to steep for 24 to 48 hours. What you create is a kind of liquid gold fertilizer. First, water your cucumber plants with clean water to help prevent root shock, then soak the root zone with the diluted tea once each week. You will be feeding the biology of the soil while encouraging an immediate, powerful wave of sweet cucumber production. The fungal shield. As we help these plants regain their strength, we also need to protect their leaves. Late summer humidity often brings powdery mildew, one of the quiet killers of cucumber vines. It usually begins as a dusty white coating across the older leaves, blocking sunlight and interfering with photosynthesis. Without enough energy production, the vine eventually collapses. We can fight it with 2 simple remedies from the kitchen. The first is baking soda spray. Mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of liquid dish soap, and 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil into 1 gallon of water. The baking soda raises the pH on the leaf surface so fungal spores cannot germinate, while the soap and vegetable oil help the solution remain attached to the foliage. The second tool is milk spray. Combine milk and water at a ratio of 1:5, or use a 50-50 mixture when an infection is already active. When sunlight reaches the milk proteins, they undergo a reaction that destroys fungal spores on contact while helping strengthen the leaf's cell walls. Always apply these sprays early in the morning, giving the foliage enough time to dry before the strong midday sun arrives. And if pests such as cucumber beetles appear, use a neem oil and castile soap spray, 2 tablespoons of neem oil and 1 teaspoon of soap per gallon of water, but always apply neem in the evening after the bees have safely returned to their hives. When you truly pay attention to a garden, you begin to realize that it is never only about the plants. Our gardens quietly reflect our attention, our patience, and our willingness to listen. When your cucumber vines begin slowing down in August, they are not finished. They are simply asking whether you have the endurance to match the effort they have already given. Harvest young, sweet cucumbers every day. Feed weekly with compost and banana tea. Prune every 2 weeks to keep the canopy open, and maintain steady, deep hydration beneath a protective layer of mulch. That simple, beautiful rhythm can make all the difference between a garden that collapses in early August and one that continues feeding your family right up until the first frost of autumn. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today here at Earthly Delights. If this guide brought a little practical wisdom into your garden, tap the like button, share it with a friend, and subscribe. Let's continue growing together. One season, one plant, and one deeply satisfying harvest at a time. May your soil always be rich, and your cucumbers always be sweet.